And let's call on Gull Borenstein, an expert in digital marketing and social media. He's the author of the new book, Activate, Power Up Your Brand to Dominate Your Market, Crush Your Competition, and Win in the Digital Age. And Gull joins us via Skype from Washington, D.C. Well, right now, Gull, it appears that ISIS has the upper hand in terms of social media. Do you see it that way?
It does, and the main reason it does is that we are playing from behind on being able to get our message out. What we needed to do is really, number one, command respect in the Middle East and make sure that people know that our message is coherent, it stands for freedom, and that our allies and the 61% of the population in the Middle East that is under the age of 29 and uses Facebook knows that the United States stand behind it. And what we're doing essentially is now we're playing catch up with a group that is very sophisticated, that is using video games to inculcate in our youth the fact that they can take Americans as zombies in a video game, and are using video, Hollywood style, to make sure that the message gets to Americans. So I think we're losing the war right now, but I think we're catching up, and eventually we will win.
Carl, we particularly want to talk to you about ISIS and their use of social media in recruiting women. What's your take on this? What can you add to this conversation?
I think that ISIS is, unlike Al-Qaeda and other organizations, is very sophisticated because of its ability to recruit Europeans and Americans to its war, is fairly calculated in how it recruits ambassadors, essentially, for their brand. Like with any good sophisticated branding operation, what they're doing is literally looking at who will carry the message the most effectively to a targeted population. So, for example, if you're trying to recruit more women, you will be trying to put a female face that says, hey, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and obviously we're doing the right thing for our society. And this dangerous effect that is being had right now is, again, a result of being able to understand who your target audience is. So I expect that to increase, and just the way they're targeting youth right now that might be disaffected in their own communities in the United States and in Europe and in England in particular, we should expect to see females with the same type of background of being disaffected taken advantage of and recruited.
Well, in terms of the disaffection, excuse me, Gull, if this sounds horribly chauvinistic, but there's, in the Western world, there's been this thing, the attraction of, quote, bad boys. I mean, how much of it is a real disaffection with life in the Western world, and a notion that a young woman believes she can fall in love with a guy who is spurned by society and misunderstood? What we see in the Western world, the attraction of men behind bars, initially as pen pals.
I think that part of it is probably a twisted logic that certainly, you know, rebel without a cause or a rebel with a cause, that certainly contributes to that. But I think there's a bigger issue where there is a disconnect in a lot of communities between how they feel about their own religious identity, as well as how they feel about fighting for a cause. And going back to my first point, I think it's extremely important to pay attention to the fact that we, as the United States, have not been firm and committed to explaining where we stand. So right now we're going into a conflict where we can't really state clearly who is the enemy, what are our values that we're trying to convince people to adhere to. And as a result of it, I think that there's a lot of confusion. So a state of confusion breeds an opportunity and a window for people to actually take advantage of us.
Well, Gull, we thank you for trying to clear up some of the confusion in terms of social media. Thanks so much for your time. Now, we want you to stay tuned, because coming up is the second hour of America's Forum. We're expecting a statement from the president coming up.